always calibrate before going for a tasting.
How do you calibrate?
High acidity, on oak, cool climate, white.
That's what you're drinking to calibrate your palate, to get it ready.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what made the difference for me. And I've tried it before. I've tried it with beer. I've tried it with different things. And I was trying to figure out what was working. And what made the difference in my journey definitely was calibration. Calibration allows you to taste something, you know what it is all about, and just make sure that your palate is understanding, okay, this is high acidity,
okay,
this is Sancerre, or this is Chablis,
okay,
and this is where the acidity level is.
Yeah.
So you have this salivation process, you know where you are. So when you get to try your first wine,
Yeah.
you're going to be like ready to go. And the calibration is going to be there working for you.
Yeah, that's like when musicians start by getting in tune with a note.
Yes.
And they go,
Yes.
ah, like I can't sing, but they're doing it with the piano so that then we can begin. Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my third book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started. What's the one thing you can do when visiting wine regions to make it your best trip ever? How can yoga help you become a better wine taster? How do you calibrate your palate, and why should you even do that? And what's it like competing in the world's best sommelier competition? Welcome to episode 67 of the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. Our guest today has those answers for you, plus many more tips on how you can become a much better wine taster. Elyse Lambert has not only earned the coveted Master Sommelier designation, she was also named Canada's Best Sommelier and came in 5th in the World's Best Sommelier event. This conversation first aired on my regular Facebook Live video show, so occasionally you'll hear me respond to viewer questions and comments. You can join that conversation every second Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll put a link as to where you can find us in the show notes, as well as links to Elyse's website, social media handles, and the video version of this conversation at nataliemclean.com/67. Speaking of becoming a better wine taster, you can do just that when you sign up for my free online video wine class, the 5 wine and food pairing mistakes that can ruin your dinner and how to fix them forever. Go to nataliemclean.com/class and choose a time and date that work for you. I look forward to seeing you inside the class. Okay, on with the show. So our guest has not only earned a coveted Master Sommelier designation, but she was named Canada's Best Sommelier in a very fierce competition. And then she went on to place 5th in the world at the World's Best Sommelier competition. She has lots of tips and tricks to share with us about appreciating wine, tasting wine. And she joins me now live from her home in Montreal. Welcome, Elyse Lambert. Maybe you could just start off by telling us, do you remember the exact moment when you realized I want to be a sommelier?
I have a pretty clear idea from my first wine class. I totally fell in love with everything that was touching wine, from the discovery of all the different flavors to the geography to the history. And my first teacher was just amazing. So that was in 1998. And for me, it was like, okay, that's what I want to do for a living. So I was the first in the class all the time, pushing my desk just next to the teacher's desk and asking like millions of questions. And that's where everything started. I was in hotel management at the time.
Okay.
At the Institute of Tourism and Hotel Management.
Is that in Montreal, that school?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So you were class keener and you realized, now did wine run in the family? Is anybody else in the business, or was wine part of growing up on the table, or what got you actually going into that program in the first place?
Food was very important home. And my mom was cooking each and every night, and having this dinner together as a family and having this very precious time around the table made me believe that the table is the number one place where you can learn and share and grow and get everything that you need to have as a kid to grow up with the right tools in your toolbox. And this being said, having the idea that the table was so important, when I got into hotel management, the idea was that I wanted to take care of people. So that was my number one. And from that, the wine world just opened up to me. And I went back to a second class, a real sommelier class in 99, and got my real certification at the time. And since then, I've been just thirsty.
Thirsty, that's a great way to put it. I love it. Elyse, so you took the hotel management and the sommelier classes, and then did you go and work in the industry, or then did you jump sort of straight into the studies in preparation for the Master Sommelier designation?
I was already working in the industry, and I've been since I was 16. So restaurant was for me something that was part of my life already. Yeah. Though when I took my hotel management class, I had the chance to start working in high-end hotel and restaurant. That's where I got all the tools for knowing fish and meat and sauce and soup and having like a great depth on beautiful wine list and wine cellar. I'm remembering quite well the Hatley Inn that sadly burned down a few years ago, but we had one of the most impressive wine lists at the time. And I was totally like looking at the sommelier and wanting so much to do what he was doing. So that got me into wine quite quickly when I finished school, and got me some of the best internship as well. I was working in really, really nice places.
Which places? Tell us some of the restaurants that you interned at. Maybe we'll recognize some of them.
Well, of course, the Hove Manor that is now a part of Relais Chateau chain. And I've been at Loa La Bouche as well, that closed down, but that was part of Relais Chateau as well. And it's been just amazing experiences where I learned truly what was a sommelier all about. And since I was quite junior in those places, at Loa La Bouche, I'm thinking of everybody there at a sommelier class. So they were allowing us to work in our own section, so selling the wine and the food in our own section. So I took like step by step the possibility of wanting to suggest and slowly having as well the sommelier to support me in this. So it was kind of super nice. But what got me into competition is first and foremost, when I got out of school in 99, I was like, I don't know anything. I just had a sommelier class, but there's so much things to know, so many things. And from that view, I was looking for a challenge to keep in my book. And that's why I started. The sommelier at the Hatley Inn actually was already competing with a friend at the time for Best of Quebec. And I was looking at what they were doing, totally thrilled and wanting to participate and doing blind tasting with them. I was like rookie as we can be at the time, but it was just good stuff. Perfect.
So you started off with the Best Sommelier Quebec competition. You got your feet wet there. 2004. Okay.
2004.
How did you do that year? Was it mostly a year of experience, shall we say, or how did it go?
Oh, that was my second time. The first time was totally a trial, but in 2004, I won Best Sommelier of Quebec. For the first time, we had 3 women on the podium, and that was something that was quite exceptional. That opened like a little window somewhere, thinking, oh, place for women in the industry, yeah, that could make sense.
Yeah.
So that was 2004.
So on your second try, you won. So you went in as a trial the first year, and then you went on and won it the second year.
Yes, it was 3 years at the time, but I wanted to get better at what I do. And that was for me a good way to do so. I had very good figure around me that were already training in this way and learning from them and understanding what was required. But that's been a long journey. And since then, I've been only on the fast track of learning, tasting, traveling.
Absolutely. Now, how does a competition help you become a better sommelier in a restaurant? What are the things that competition brings out in you that you bring to the restaurant floor?
knowledge.
Yes. Okay.
Actually, you don't need to do competition to be a great sommelier. For me, it was to give me a reason to keep in my books, because many of you may know that if you finish your class and you close your book and you don't open your book ever again, don't read, don't taste, don't travel, well, you won't keep up to date for very long. So that was a little bit of the reason I wanted to.
A motivator. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally,
Absolutely.
Totally.
Are you still competing? Now you've won Canada's best and come 5th in the world. Are you still going to go back to those competitions or the worlds, or what are your plans right now for competition?
It's too early to say.
Okay.
For now, I'm still in my books. I'm still learning.
You're still in your books, but you do have a book, or you co-wrote a book with 2 other authors, right?
Yes.
And
Méchants Raisins.
Oh, you're going to have to translate for this poor little Anglophone. What is the title in English, please?
In French, it's called Les Méchants Raisins.
Okay.
It's like the bad grapes.
Bad grapes. Okay.
Bad grapes, but in a good way. It's been my 2nd year writing a book with 2 colleagues.
Yeah.
We started this whole little booklet to keep people up to date on what's new, what's good, what's great value wine, a little bit about orange wine, what's about natural wine.
Right. All the trendy wines.
Yes. So we're like writing on trends each and every year, but at the same time as well, wanting to give suggestion on if you're eating a big like spaghetti with meatball, like a couple of suggestions for that, or some pizza, or you want to like chicken, like we want to keep pairing as simple as possible, giving little tricks for people to understand what the pairing are all about. So it's mini chapters. It's very easy to read.
Take us there. You've whet our appetite. What would you suggest with spaghetti and meatballs? How would you pair that? And what would be the tip or trick to remember?
Well, Italian food, Italian wine. That's
regional.
For me. Regional is number 1. And as well, I really like tomato sauce. Tomato and Sangiovese are just super partners. So when I start pairing, I like to think of what I would drink if I was in that specific place of the world. So regional pairing. Yeah. But as well, the acidity of the Sangiovese with the tomato is just like something not to miss. So a great Chianti or some Morellino di Scansano or a Brunello di Montalcino. If you want to go, it depends on your budget. So I have different suggestions at different price points.
Okay, fantastic. Do you have a personal favorite wine?
I would say that my favorite varietal right now is Nebbiolo.
Oh, why is that?
And for Nebbiolo, finesse and elegance on the aromatic and like little grippy tannins is fun for me, but the freshness and the beautiful acidity on the backbone of the Nebbiolo. And I have to say that I've visited Piedmont and Barolo and Barbaresco region have been like beautiful experiences and still becoming more and more trendy. And that's the difficulty because now the prices are going up quite quickly.
Right.
And in white, I would say Burgundy, Chardonnay. Oh. I'm a Chardonnay girl. Like, I'm one of those. Sorry.
No need to apologize. We've come back again from ABC, anything but Chardonnay. We've flipped the other way where Chardonnay is cool again, especially Burgundy. That's a cool climate, right?
I have to say that many of my Master Sommelier friends are totally into Riesling, and I'm really okay with that. But there's nothing for me like a Chablis, Great Burgundy, Meursault, Puligny Montrachet. Mm-hmm. Like those guys are just in my top favorite. If you want to make me happy,
yes, and we do.
Of Meursault on a fresh vintage, and you're gonna keep the sommelier like smiling.
Wow. Okay. All variations on the theme of Chardonnay. Cool climate Chardonnay. All right. So let me just look over here. Tim is saying, I'm traveling to France in the spring in the Loire Valley and the Champagne region just outside of Paris. Have you been there? And do you have any favorites that you want to share with us?
Yes, of course. Champagne, of course, there is tons of very good champagne producer wanting to vary the pleasure, wanting to visit maybe some bigger champagne house will be important to see how they work, but wanting as well to focus on some smaller ones. So I would go with one of the big group from LVMH, which is,
Louis, Hennessy, Vuitton. It's Veuve Clicquot and Moët Chandon.
And
all the biggies.
And so on.
Yeah.
What's important is and what's nice is to understand how they work. And from that, maybe like go to something that is a little bit more on a smaller scale, but with like Paul Roger, for example, that is still family owned.
Okay.
And go on some smaller one, or Henriot, who can be quite fun.
Right.
or some smaller one. I love Agrapar and Normandie Bernier.
Yeah.
So Agrapar for me is a must. It drinks like wine. And Normandie Bernier as well. Those guys, or Pascal Doquet. So small growers, I like to think when you visit a region that you should not focus only on the small one. You should focus a little bit of everything to have a good overview of the region.
Great answer. Fantastic. And
Yes.
Dave Head is here. We had Planeta last night. It was so good. So you're talking about Nero d'Avola from Sicily, I think, Dave. Do you like those wines as well of Sicily, Elyse?
I would say that the new trend for sommelier, and it's been going on for a little bit more than a year now, is Etna.
Right.
Etna Rosso.
Volcanic,
Volcanic soil. So Nerello Mascalese, main varietal for that. And Nerello Mascalese, if you don't know this varietal, it's nice because it's kind of a combination. It's not a crossing. I'm just saying stylistically, it's a combination in between Pinot Noir and Nebbiolo. So if you like those two varietal, go and explore Etna Rosso and Nerello Mascalese. It's a fantastic varietal.
Yeah.
And that's been my pizza wine too.
Oh, pizza wine. Excellent. We're always up for that. Did you, I'm sure you did, watch the documentary Somm?
Of course.
Yes, of course. Okay. Obvious. But what was your opinion of that documentary? It's all about, by the way, if anybody hasn't seen it yet, the making of these group of, mostly guys, I think, try to pass, they were all guys?
Too many guys.
Too many guys. Good for you. But they're all trying to pass the Master Sommelier exam. So it chronicles their studies and their dialogue, and some pass, some fail. What was your opinion of that documentary? Was it a good depiction, or did you have some criticisms of it? What was your take on that?
But I'd like to see more girls, that's for sure.
For sure. Yeah. There wasn't one woman, was there, in there?
There was like one that flew there and disappeared quite quickly, but
okay.
Not. And it was a study group, so it's normal that, you don't want to include someone that was not there maybe to start with, which makes sense for the purpose of the Somm movie. What I like about this movie was for people to understand how difficult and how committed you need to be if you want to become a master sommelier. It's a little bit of Americanized. I was not working with flashcard. I was not studying like late at night because you're here in my study bubble.
Yes.
So welcome in my nest.
I love that. Nest.
And I am studying most of the time in the morning. I think that you need to be mentally ready and mentally rested if you want to absorb the information.
Right.
Flashcard is not for everybody. I haven't been studying with flashcards. So everybody is different. I was not studying in a group either. So studying as a group can be fun. Tasting, I've been choosing the people I was tasting with. And I think beauty is in the diversity. If you want to succeed, I think that tasting with different people will allow you to get nervous when tasting with certain people, not playing their game as well. Sometimes if you taste always with the same people, you end up knowing what they're buying all the time.
Right.
So you can read before tasting like what you think that they could have brought. So if you think of tasting and wanting to step further in your journey as a master sommelier, taste with different people. Taste with people you're not aware or you don't know. Like just get in an uncomfortable position. Because the day of the exam, you don't know who's going to be sitting in front of you. You have no idea of what the wine will be. So you have to be like mentally and physically ready for something new. So
I love that you say get in an uncomfortable position. I think that's when we're learning. Like just on the other side of fear is a deep-seated learning. So how did you deal with your nerves when it came to, you can talk about either taking the Master Sommelier exam or one of the competitions? Like maybe there's a strategy you use for most of those situations, but how do you stay calm and focused?
I got better at that in the last few years. And there's a few tips that will make the difference in your journey. First, sleep.
Okay.
Second, train physically, like move.
Okay.
Eat well. Like it's all like basic stuff. But if you're not rested, and I have to say as well, meditation. Yoga, meditation.
Wow. Okay.
Can make a big difference. For me, what made the difference is a little bit of all of that. So before the exam, I went for a run and I was like, just to get this extra energy that was like here, like down, and always calibrate before going for a tasting.
How do you calibrate?
High acidity, on oak, cool climate, white.
That's what you're drinking to calibrate your palate, to get it ready.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what made the difference for me. And I've tried it before. I've tried it with beer. I've tried it with different things. And I was trying to figure out what was working. And what made the difference in my journey definitely was calibration. Calibration allows you to taste something, you know what it is all about, and just make sure that your palate is understanding, okay, this is high acidity,
Okay.
this is Sancerre, or this is Chablis,
Okay.
and this is where the acidity level is.
Yeah.
So you have this salivation process, you know where you are. So when you get to try your first wine,
Yeah.
you're going to be like ready to go. And the calibration is going to be there working for you.
Yeah, that's like when musicians start by getting in tune with a note.
Yes.
And they go,
Yes.
like I can't sing, but they're doing it with the piano so that then we can begin.
Exactly.
It's great
and this is the best way. If eventually you're starting with a first wine and you did not calibrate, and you're starting with a wine that is fairly low in acidity, you're going to wonder like, oh, where am I, and this and that. And if you start with the wrong product on one, everything, like, you're going to mess with the following one.
Yeah.
So knowing where you are with the first one you're sipping on, saying, okay, I'm drinking Sancerre. This is Sancerre. This is aromatic. This is, so you're going to have the full evaluation of your product number one before you get to blind taste on your first wine.
Brilliant.
I did that I had a coffee cup for the tasting with the Court of Master Sommelier for my master exam.
Yeah.
It was my number 6 time. Six
times.
6 time.
You're determined. Okay? Yes. Okay.
So I knew I was resetting if I was not having this tasting.
You were not going to go back if you didn't pass on the 6th time. And
I was a reset. I was going back to square one, and I had already like theory and a service that I got.
Yeah.
I had only one part to complete, and that one part was the tasting. So when I arrived there, pressure was here.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So I put in a coffee cup some Sancerre.
Ah, okay.
Because I didn't know how much time I would wait before they come and get me.
Sure.
So getting the Sancerre in my coffee cup, arriving for the tasting, and waiting for my name to be called. And I was barely arrived. They said like, oh, Elyse, please join me. So I was tipping the coffee cup, threw it away, and left with the Sancerre in my mouth, thinking, okay, this is my calibration. And then I'm going to arrive in 3 minutes and start my tasting.
Right. And it worked. And I should just say, it's an exceptionally low pass rate. 6 times is not uncommon. I've heard for the Master of Wine, the other program, it's 10%. I think it's that low or somewhere around there for the Master Sommelier. These are really, really hard exams that take years to finally pass and prepare for. So, one thing I was going to ask you, Elyse, is that in some and in the competitions where I've seen you compete, the way you talk about the wine in front of the judges is very specific. It's not like, oh, I'm getting some apple, whatever. It's boom, 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 this rapid fire. Can you give us a sample of, you've got a wine there, but can you give us a sample of how you would talk about a wine in competition?
For the Master Sommelier, there's a tasting grid that is expected that you have to follow. If you want to get this Master Sommelier title, you follow the grid. If you're not following the grid, it's recipe for disaster for the future of your red pin. Okay. So as you go for a competition for Best of Canada, Best of the World, or so on, you do need to speak a little bit less technically and a little bit more into something where you're going to speak to a person. Like the evaluation of the Master Sommelier is done in a very rigid way because I want you as a judge to be able to understand if I understand the wine. So that's why we're talking medium plus, high, because high is high. It's not like, there's a lot of acidity. Well, a lot of acidity is how much. So
more precise.
To be very precise in the way you taste for the Master Sommelier, as when you get into competition, you want to be a little bit more poetic in the way you're going to speak. Okay. So you're going to start like with the 3-step visual, olfactory, and taste, of course. Then you're going to wrap this up in an initial conclusion and bring the baby home for a final conclusion.
Of what you think it is.
Yes. What you think it is. I'm drinking a Corbière from Château Lastour.
A southern French wine from a warm region. Château Lastour?
Lastour. It's the cuvée Simone Desquin. I'm working on paper on fondue and raclette.
Oh,
So
nice.
like fondue, like Chinese fondue and stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you want to have a red that won't be too tannic. You want to have something that's going to have a little bit of personality still.
Yeah.
And that's going to be going with different type of food. So for me, Corbière was the way to go. I've tried it last week. I really liked it. And I was like, that could be a good fit for my fondue.
Absolutely.
So basically, you're going to start with the color, and the evaluation of the color is going to be based on first the color itself and then the intensity of it.
Yeah, and just maybe pretend you're in either competition or Master Sommelier. How would you tell us if we were the judges?
So the evaluation I would make from this wine would be first on the visual, deep purple color with a very small pinkish rim, no presence of gas or sediment, medium viscosity, no staining of the glass. Then you are going to go on the nose and do the evaluation. So the nose is clean. There's no fault to it. I've checked it before. It's medium aromatic with aromas of lots of black fruit, and the fruit is quite ripe. It's slightly jammy as well. We're more on plum, just a touch of dry plum and dried cranberry. We do have a little bit of pomegranate. Well,
Very
and
specific.
tons of spices, licorice, and it's all the baking spices, a little bit of nutmeg and some cacao. But on the other side, you do have a little bit of forest floor as well. That is quite interesting. Bring a little bit of depth and a little bit of gaminess attached to it.
Wow.
And a touch of oak on it. You feel it with the baking spices on the palate.
It's an amazing vocabulary you have.
Trying as much as I can to share this for you to understand what I'm drinking.
Yeah, no, that's
And
great.
that's the idea.
Yeah.
When you do a tasting, always put yourself in the idea that if you had someone in front of you, try to describe as precisely as you can what you smell and what you taste.
Right.
Like if they were trying this wine. So on the palate, the one is dry. It's medium bodied. The tannins are medium, but they're silky tannin, very fine and very refined and grainy, just slightly grainy tannins. You do have this medium plus acidity. There's a little bit of heat coming from this wine. It's 14 and a half. So the heat, you feel it on the cheek. Mm-hmm. That's just slightly high for me. The temperature is starting to be a little bit warm. I got it out of the cellar a couple of minutes ago.
Okay, terrific. Wow. And how did you develop that wide vocabulary you're using? Is it just practice, or do you use a vendonnais? Are you smelling vegetables and fruits, or is it a combination of things?
Life is bringing you tons of different smell all the time, each and every day. Yeah. So yes, it's I was always very curious. I had my nose everywhere when I was young. I was in the garden with my grandma. I was cooking with her. And my mom was cooking a lot as well. So this develops a lot your sensitivity to aromas. But notice that there's so many possibility for you to smell and taste on a daily basis. But make sure that you can relate to some terms that people will be able to find as well. What I'm saying is, if it smells like your grandma's cupboard, well, you're the only one that knows what your grandma's cupboard smells like.
Right.
So you want to use terms that people will understand. Oh, it's dried raisins, like this little sun-made bucks. So, if you think of a specific smell, use aromatic that people will be able to relate to. And that's super important. Be as specific as possible as well. It's all things that you develop with experience.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice, Elyse. Tim says, is there a region that produces wine that deserves a higher profile here in Canada, in your opinion, Elyse?
Prince Edward County.
Okay. I'll agree with you on that for sure. Yeah.
I think that we have beautiful wine coming from there.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that would be my number one right now. It's still a small region, but there are some key producers there that are making the difference, definitely. Mm-hmm. Niagara Peninsula is doing some amazing stuff too, and from Harold Field, from Hidden Bench to Cave Spring to if you're more into natural or experimental wine, Pearl Marisette, there's tons of great people working from Southbrook. If you want to explore their orange wine.
Oh, their orange wine is so good, from Anne Sperling. Oh my goodness. Yes.
Anne is just amazing. She's great. So there's, I think, so many regions that are right now starting to emerge, but as well some key producer. I'm thinking of Benjamin Bridge,
Yes, Nova Scotia, yes. Yeah.
that is doing fabulous sparkling wine. So there's a little bit of everything right now in Canada.
Yes,
And
isn't
Canada
there?
and it's still a baby.
Yeah, absolutely. Still in the beginning stages. Thank you for that comment, Alan. I'm glad you're enjoying the conversation. Dave had, what would be the most overrated French first growth in your opinion? Oh, that's a pointed question.
Can I answer this? No.
No? Okay.
Overrated first growth. There are some fifth and second and third that would deserve to be higher.
Good way to put it.
To reverse this question.
Yes.
Such as Lynchbage.
Yes.
Lynchbage is just amazing. Pichon Longueville Comtesse should be, they're touching perfection right now. And some fabulous producer, I'm thinking, that are not classified. Sauciando Malais should be part of like what's great and amazing right now. So,
all right. So there's,
classification is not everything. La Grange is amazing for the price as well. So I don't want to lower some of them. I want to push up some other. I think it's a better way to do things.
Absolutely. Very diplomatic too, Elyse. So is there any need for a somm to know wines from small regions that do not have wide distribution? For example, BC produces excellent wines, but in very small quantities and with little availability outside the province.
I think what's important is to put in context who you work for or in which restaurant you are.
Right.
As my need if I'm working in a restaurant is to understand like, what is my wine list all about? So learning first and foremost what's important for the clientele and keeping curious. But if there's no distribution, if you need to study for competition, yes, you'll need to know those things, particularly if you're working to become best of Canada, knowing everything inside out from the country is going to be important. But after that, I was lately working in a Italian restaurant. So my main focus has been on Italian wine because I wanted to be like first and foremost comfortable with the most important part of my wine list.
Right.
So making sure you focus on the right thing in regard of, if you're a sales rep, well, what's in your portfolio? What's important to know in your portfolio? And when you get to master what you need to know on your day-to-day job, then you can like start exploring on things that could be interesting for you in the near future, for a travel, for a trip, or for a competition, or for whatever your interest is in.
Right. Good point. So just a few last quick questions as we sort of wrap up our discussion. I could go on for hours here. Elyse, you are truly an encyclopedia, but not in the dry sense, in the very interesting sense. What is the best piece of wine advice that you've ever received?
Keep humble. Humility is number one in our industry.
Okay.
Think that you're giving recommendation. Be kind. Be curious. My role as a sommelier is to take care of people. It's not to show my knowledge. I'm not there to show myself. I'm there to take care of people. And if you keep this as number one, people will remember you as sommelier or as a sales rep or whatever you're doing in the industry. They will remember you for your kindness, for being attentive to their needs. Because when you spend a couple of $100 in a restaurant, well, it may be something that is important and you've been saving for a long time for that experience you're having with someone. And you want this to be special. You want people to recognize that this moment is special and it's you as sommelier that will make the difference. And don't forget that it's a teamwork. So if they're asking you for water or for bread or for whatever else, as a sommelier, the answer is always yes. Try to make sure that they're going to be happy when they leave. They're going to spread the good word. And that's your cheapest advertising in the industry. Keeping people happy is number one.
Love that answer. If you could share a bottle of wine with anyone, living or dead, who would that be and why?
That's a good question.
I'm throwing you
I don't know. I was a big fan of Jancis Robinson.
Okay. And she's still living, by the way, right? You said was, but...
because I finally met her.
Yeah. Oh.
So my dream came true.
Okay.
But I was so nervous. I was like, okay, so yeah, how are you? And I was like, I didn't want to show how groupie I was. But I would be curious to maybe meet some key people. Michelle Obama would like to have a glass of
Michelle Obama. Why Michelle Obama? I love that choice. Why her?
I think she's a very inspiring woman.
Mm-hmm.
It's someone that I believe will, in no time, make maybe some very important difference. Hopefully, she does already for kids, and with like her community and her dedication, I think became contagious.
Mm-hmm.
So just to chat about like everything and nothing at the same time. But number one, probably I would like to have a glass of wine with my grandma. She
Aw.
passed away a few years ago, and she's been the reason why I've been in the industry. She gave me curiosity and pleasure of eating, pleasure of sharing food at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had the chance, I would say like I would have her back for one night. I would love that.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Wow. Elyse, we're going to wrap it up with you here on that note. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. I just
Thank
love
you.
this conversation, loved your answers and your approach. It's refreshing and charming and kind. So we will say goodbye for now because I know you've got an article to write. And
Thank you for joining, and hope that you get a little bit of inspiration to drink less but drink better.
Absolutely. Well put. Okay. Take care, Elyse. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this chat with Elyse Lambert. Here are my takeaways. Number 1, I admire Elyse's unquenchable curiosity, pushing her desk up to her teacher's desk and asking, quote, millions of questions. She's always, I love this phrase, in the books, learning, tasting, and traveling. And that's great advice for us too, as wine drinkers, when we have a thirst to learn. Number 2, she shares great pairing tips such as regional matches with tomato sauce and Sangiovese, as well as the enticing freshness of Etna wines made on the southern Italian island of Sicily, especially those made from the Nerello Mascalese grape. Number 3, Elyse has a great tip about calibrating your palate before you taste wine with a high acidity, cool climate white wine. And then you can benchmark everything you taste after that against it. This is especially helpful for those doing blind tastings since you start with a wine you can see the label, and then you can make more educated guesses about wines where their identity is masked. I compared this to musicians warming up before a show to see if they're in the right key, but yes, don't ask me to sing. Number 4, I marveled at how dedicated Elyse was to those competitions, from the constant study to meditation, yoga, and running, just to be in the right mindset and to have the right energy in the right place. I'd say she's an Olympic caliber wine athlete. And finally, number 5, Elyse has some wise advice for any business. Caring for people and keeping them happy is the cheapest advertising in the industry. They'll remember you and come back, and they'll tell their friends. If you like this episode, please tell a friend about it, especially one who's interested in the fascinating wine tips Elyse shared. You'll find links to her website, social media handles, the video version of this conversation, and where you can find us on Facebook Live video every second Wednesday at 7 p.m. All of those links are in the show notes at nataliemclean.com/67. Finally, if you want to connect with me personally, join me in a free online video class at nataliemclean.com/class. You won't want to miss next week when we'll be chatting with celebrity chef Vikram Vij, the author of numerous best-selling cookbooks, who has also been on hit shows such as Chopped, Top Chef, and Dragon's Den. He's the first Indian chef to earn a sommelier degree. He's joined by his head sommelier, Sean Nelson, who became Western Canada's youngest advanced sommelier in 2016. And together they speak to us from Vij's restaurant in Vancouver, one of Canada's best restaurants, renowned for both food and wine. They'll be sharing their tips on how to pair wine and spicy dishes. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week. Perhaps a wine that makes you curious to learn more about it. You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So subscribe for free now at nataliemclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.